This is Chapter 1 or Lesson 1, Information System Security, Part 2. And in this part of Chapter 1, we are going to talk about the 7 domains of a typical information technology infrastructure. There are 7 what they call domains, and the first one is the user domain, which defines the people that access an organization's information systems. Then we have the workstation domain, which includes desktop computers, laptop computers, special purpose terminals, or any other device that connects to the network. Then the local area network domain, a collection of computers connected to one another or to a common connection medium, but all within one local area network. Now the image here shows a hub, but a hub is a dumb device that doesn't evaluate the packets as they go through. Typically what would subdivide a local area network or connect different parts or different subnets of a local area network would be a more intelligent device, which runs at layer 2 of the OSR reference model, and that would be a switch, not a hub. Very few organizations would use the hub today. The third is the local area network to WAN, LAN to WAN domain, where the IT infrastructure links to a wide area network and the internet. The wide area network domain, or the WAN domain, connects remote users to the organization's IT infrastructure. And of course, the WAN domain, the largest WAN out there, is the internet. The system application domain holds all the mission critical systems, applications, and data. And the remote access domain is how users who are remote to the system connect, usually used through broadband internet. Again, through the internet to the local area network, through the LAN to WAN domain. Again, through the wide area network that the company employs through the internet. So if you have a wide area network for your organization and it's got multiple locations, that wide area network is your domain, but it is running through the internet. Okay, so the user domain. Each one of these domains, we have a slide on the roles and tasks, the responsibilities, and the accountability. So as you can see here, the roles and tasks are the users can access systems, applications, and data depending upon their defined access rights. The responsibilities of the employees who are responsible for their use of IT assets. The accountability is the HR department is accountable for implementing proper employee background checks. Some of the common threats in the user domain include lack of user awareness. To mitigate that, you want to conduct security awareness training, display security awareness posters, insert reminders and banner greetings, send email reminders to employees. User apathy to policies. Users don't want to do what they're told. You need to conduct annual security awareness training, implement acceptable use policies, update staff manual and handbooks, and discuss status of these during performance reviews. And notice none of these are technical. They are all organizational. They are all people-oriented soft skills, if you will. Which the same thing goes for a user filing security policy. Then you could place that employee on probation, review the acceptable use policy to make sure it's correct, and the employee manual discuss the status during performance reviews. Some of the other things, a user inserting a CD, DVD, USB with personal files on it. So you want to enable automatic antivirus scans for inserted media drives, files, and email attachments. An antivirus scanning system examines all new files on your computer's hard drive for viruses and enable email antivirus scanning for emails with attachments. A user downloading photos, music, or videos. You want to enable content filtering and antivirus scanning on email attachments. Content filtering security appliances can be configured to permit or deny specific domain names in accordance with the acceptable use policy. A user could be destructing systems, applications, and data. So you want to restrict access for users to only those systems, applications, and data needed to perform their job. Minimize the write or delete permissions to the data owner only. What if you got a disgruntled employee attacking the organization or committing sabotage? You want to track and monitor abnormal employee behavior, erratic job performance, and use of IT infrastructure during off hours. Begin IT access control lockout procedures based on acceptable use policy monitoring and compliance. What if the employee decides to blackmail or extort your company? So you can track and monitor abnormal employee behavior and use of IT infrastructure during off hours when they'd be most likely to do it. Enabled intrusion detection system, intrusion prevention system, IDS IPS monitoring for sensitive employee positions and access. IDS IPS security appliances examine the Internet Protocol data streams for inbound and outbound traffic. And alarms and alerts programmed with an IDS IPS help identify the abnormal traffic and can block IP traffic per policy definition. So there you see the integration of policies with technology. Okay, so the workstation domain, the roles and tasks here are to configure the hardware, harden systems, and verify antivirus files. The responsibilities are to ensure the integrity of the user's workstation and the data that's in it. And the accountability is the director of the IT security is generally in charge of ensuring that the workstation domain conforms to this policy. Some of the threats and how we mitigate them. Again, mitigation is how we prevent them or how we forestall them. But unauthorized workstation access, well, that's pretty simple. You would enable password protection on workstations. Unauthorized access to systems, applications, and data, you would define just very strict access control policies, standards, procedures, and guidelines. Implement a second level test to verify users' right to gain access. For desktop or laptop operating system vulnerabilities, you need to define the workstation operating system vulnerability window policy. A vulnerability window is the gap in the time that you leave a computer unpatched with a security update. So you need to patch things as soon as it comes available. Start periodic workstation domain vulnerability tests to find the gaps. Desktop or laptop application software vulnerabilities or patches. So define a workstation application software vulnerability window policy again and update the application software and security patches according to the defined policies, standards, procedures, and guidelines. Viruses, malicious code, and other malware. So use workstation antivirus and malicious code policies, standards, procedures, and guidelines. Enable an automated antivirus protection solution that scans and updates individual workstations with proper protection. If a user is inserting CD, DVD, USB with personal files, deactivate all CD-ROM, DVD, and USB ports. There are plenty of companies that do this. Enable automatic virus scans for all installed media containing files. And if the user is downloading photos, music, or videos, you would enable content filtering and antivirus scanning at the internet entry and exit points and enable workstation auto scans and auto quarantine for unknown file types. So now we go on to the LAN domain, local area network. Within your local area network, the roles and tasks are to include both physical network components and logical configuration of services for the users. The LAN support group is in charge of the physical components and logical elements, and the local area network manager's duty is to maximize the use and integrity of data within the LAN domain. So common threats and how to mitigate them in this domain would be unauthorized physical access to the local area network. So here you need to make sure that wiring closets, data centers, and computer rooms are secure and no access is allowed without proper credentials. Unauthorized access to systems, applications, and data. Strict access control policies, standards, procedures, and guidelines should be implemented. Second level identity required to access sensitive systems, applications, and data. The LAN server operating system vulnerabilities. Define the vulnerability window policies, standards, procedures, and guidelines, and conduct local area network domain vulnerability assessments. LAN server application, software vulnerabilities, and software patch updates. Define a strict software vulnerability window policy requiring quick software patching. So here we're not talking just about operating systems, we're talking about application software. Get rogue users on wireless local area networks. That could happen. You got to remove these people from unauthorized access. Use wireless local area network keys that require a password for wireless access. Turn off broadcasting on wireless access points. Enable second level authentication prior to granting wireless local area network access. The confidentiality of data on WLANs. Maintain The confidentiality data transmissions implement encryption between workstation and the wireless access point to maintain confidentiality. And finally, LAN server configuration guidelines and standards. LAN servers have different hardware, operating systems, and software, making it difficult to manage and troubleshoot consistently. But one thing you should do is you should never run other software on a machine that hosts the local area network server, that is the local area network server and hosts the local area network with its operating system. You should not be running application software on that machine. It should be dedicated only to running the local area network. Okay, so the LAN-to-WAN domain, the roles and tasks here, because now you're connecting from the local area network to the wide area network and then back to another local area network, but includes both physical pieces and logical design of the security appliances. Physical parts need to be managed to give easy access to the service. Physical components, logical elements, and applying the defined security controls are the responsibilities. And accountability is to ensure that the local area network to wide area network domain security policy standards, procedures, and guidelines are used. Some common threats in this domain and how to prevent them. Unauthorized probing and port scanning. So you need to disable ping, probing, port scanning on all exterior IP devices within the LAN-to-WAN domain. Ping uses the ICMP, Internet Control Message Protocol, echo request and echo reply. You need to disallow IP port numbers used for probing and scanning and monitor with intrusion detection system and intrusion prevention system. So here, you may want to employ ping in your network for you as a network manager, and that's fine. But you got to make sure that nobody from the outside can get into your network and enable ping on their own or actually ping your network. Unauthorized access. So here you want to apply a strict security monitoring control for intrusion detection and prevention. You need to monitor the traffic and block it right away if it's malicious. IP router, firewall, and network appliance operating system vulnerability. You need to define a strict zero-day vulnerability window definition and update the devices with security fixes and software patches right away. Local users downloading unknown file types from unknown sources. That happens. Apply file transfer monitoring, scanning, and alarming for unknown file types and sources. Unknown email attachments and embedded URL links received by local users. Apply the email server and attachment antivirus and email quarantining for unknown file types. Stop the domain name website access based on content filtering policies. So now we go to the wide area network domain, and again, it's running on the internet, but it's your wide area network, so you're responsible for it. Roles and tasks allow users the most access possible while making sure what goes in and out is safe. The responsibility of the physical components and the logical elements of it, and the accountability is to maintain, update, and provide technical support and ensure the company meets security guide policies, standards, procedures, and guidelines. Common threats here include, and how to mitigate them, open, public, and accessible data, apply acceptable use policies modeled after RFC 1087 ethics in the internet. Most traffic is sent as clear text. You don't want to do that. Stop the use of the internet for private communications unless encryption and virtual private network tunnels are used. Enforce the organization's data classification standard. They could be vulnerable to eavesdropping. Use encryption and VPN tunneling for secure IP communications. They could be vulnerable to malicious attacks. Deploy layered LAN-to-WAN security countermeasures. They could be vulnerable to denial of service and distributed DDoS, distributed denial of service attacks. Apply filters on the exterior IP stateful firewalls and IP router WAN interfaces. They could be vulnerable to corruption of information and data. Encrypt the IP data transmissions with VPNs. Backup and store data in offsite data vaults, online or physical data backup with tested recovery procedures. And you have to remember that TCP/IP is inherently insecure. It wasn't built with security in mind. And some of those applications or protocols, HTTP, file transfer protocol, FTP, TFTP, etc., refer to your data classification standard for proper handling of data and use of TCP/IP applications. Never use a TCP/IP application for confidential data without proper encryption because TCP/IP is not encrypted. Create a network management, so you got to apply an encryption application to it. Create a network management virtual local area network and isolate TFTP and SNMP traffic used for network management. Simple network management protocol Again, you want to make sure that you're isolating that traffic from the rest of the world. Okay, so some more threats in the WAN domain, and this has to do with connectivity. The commingling of WAN IP traffic on the same service provider, router, and infrastructure. Encrypt confidential data transmissions through service provider WAN using VPN tunnels. Maintaining high WAN service availability. Obtain the WAN service availability service level agreement from the provider. Deploy redundant internet and WAN connections when 100% availability is required. And you got to remember, even though it's running on the internet, it's your internet service provider that's going to be providing you connectivity through the WAN. So when it says there the service level agreement, the SLA, um, you're dealing with that internet service provider, and they're the one that has to provide the SLA to you as to what service level they're going to provide for you. Uh, using let's see, using SNMP network management applications maliciously, you need to make sure that that's uh, that separate WAN network management. Um, virtual local area networks are created. Use strict firewall access control lists, allowing the SNMP manager and router IP addresses through the LAN-to-WAN domain. You need to make sure that WAN optimization data compression solutions are in place when accessing remote systems, applications, and data, and that access control lists on outbound router WAN interfaces are kept up with policy. And SNMP alarms and security monitoring 24/7, 365 days a year, you have to have outsource your security operations and monitoring if you can't do it yourself, and expand the services to include managed security. Okay, so the remote access domain, the roles and tasks here are to connect mobile users to their IT systems through the public internet. The responsibility to maintain, update, and troubleshoot the hardware and logical remote access connection. And the accountability is to ensure the remote access domain security plans, standards, methods, and guidelines are used. So common threats and how to mitigate them: brute force user ID and password attacks. You need to define user ID and password policy definitions. Use of passwords must be strictly more than just 8 characters and alphanumeric. You've got to have a secure password policy. Multiple logon retries and access control attacks. You need to set automatic blocking for attempted logon retries. 3 is the usual number, but you may want to allow 4. But whatever it is, you need to make sure it's in place. Unauthorized remote access to IT systems, applications, and data. Apply first level and second level security for remote access to sensitive systems and data. Confidential data compromise remotely. Encrypt all confidential data in the database or hard drive. If the data is stolen, it's encrypted and can't be used. And data leakage and violation of data classification standards. Apply security countermeasures in the LAN-to-WAN domain. Lastly, the system application domain roles and tasks includes hardware and its logical design, secure mission critical applications and intellectual property assets, both physically and logically. The responsibilities lay in server systems administration, database design and management, designing access rights to systems and applications, and more than just that. And accountability, ensure that security policy standards, procedures, and guidelines are common in compliance. And so our last slide here is the common threats in this domain: unauthorized access to data centers, computer rooms, and wiring closets. So you have to have policy, standards, and procedures and guidelines for staff and visitors to secure facilities. You have to employ physical security, and that means password protected rooms, locked rooms by way of biometrics, whatever it takes to ensure that data centers and computer rooms and wiring closets are locked down. Downtime of servers to perform maintenance. Create a system that brings together servers, storage, and networking. Server operating system software vulnerability. Define the vulnerability window for server operating system environments. Maintain hardened production server operating systems. Insecure cloud computing. Virtual environments by default, they are insecure by default. Implement virtual firewalls and server segmentation on separate virtual local area networks. A virtual firewall is software based on base firewall used in virtual environments. Corrupt or lost data. Implement daily data backups and offsite data storage for monthly data archiving. I can't stress backing up your data enough. You have to ensure that data is backed up every day and taken off-site so that it can be secure, and that is archived at least once a month so it's further secure. You need to define data recovery procedures based on define what we call recovery time objectives. How long would it take to recover all that data? And you need to make sure that you know how long it would take. And then the loss of backup data as backup media are reused. Convert all data into digital data for long-term storage. Some companies still use tape. There's nothing wrong with that. But you need to make sure that you convert this stuff so it's for long-term storage. It's something that you can rely on. So that concludes part 2. In part 3, we'll talk about some more human-related topics from chapter 1.